This video is going to show a design proposal on about how we could make a little bit easier to build and configure the extensible SDK with Toaster. The first kind of decision that somehow has been made is to expose only the extensible SDK. So from the experience of having both the ADT and the SDK available, we have kind of learned that having two things that are very similar and seem to do similar things confuses people quite a lot. They are not clear about what the differences are between them and what one is good for versus the other. We have a similar situation at the moment with the SDK and the extensible SDK, which is normal because of the transition period from one to the other. But the assumption I think we're making here is that eventually the extensible SDK will replace the old SDK and you will have just an SDK. You can build this extensible SDK at the moment with Toaster. You need to do something like this. You have to select a image and then you can specify the task. So if I do this and then I click build, this will build me the extensible SDK. But this is not necessarily visible if you don't know that there is a specific task, bit task, that is called populate SDK ext, and that's what actually builds the extensible SDK. You will never be able to actually generate it through Toaster. So the first thing is exposing the existence of the SDK. So I've split the old build button here into two. One that builds, that's exactly what the build button does now. Another one that builds the extensible SDK. So that means that to build the extensible SDK, I just need to enter a target there, and instead of clicking build, I will click the SDK button, and that will start a build for my target for the SDK, and out of the build will come the SDK artifacts. To enable these, we need to provide a default configuration. To expose that default configuration and the different options that are available with the extensible SDK, I've created a page where you can configure the SDK. And it's here in this extra configuration section that we have at the moment. So if you click on it, what you have here is a list of all the variables that are available for the extensible SDK under default values. So there is a core section, there is a publishing section, and there is an additional section with other stuff, things like the title or the blacklist, the filters and whitelist filters. There is an explanation section here on the right hand side where each of these things are explained, and that provides also links to the manual on the SDK developer's guide. So this is the default configuration, which is the one that we decided in the bug. The full is set by default. The uninclude package data is set to 0, and SState mirrors are blacklisted. You can edit all these from Toaster. And the good thing about the extensible SDK is that the set of configuration variables is relatively small. Their values are a limited set of values in general, and the relationships between those values and the different variables seems to be quite clear. That means that when it comes to setting configuration in this advanced kind of page, we can help people to do the right thing. So if I don't want the full SDK, I can come in here and select the minimal one. But when I select minimal, you will be asked to provide an SState mirror. And if you don't provide it, you won't be able to save the option. So I'm going to have to provide a mirroring here, something like that. And then I can click save. And when I click save, I have the SState mirror now, but also the include package data value has been set to 1 because this is what makes sense for the minimal SDK, but also the SState mirrors variable has been whitelisted and removed from the blacklisted side. So, and if I came here and set back to full, the SState mirrors goes away, and I click save, and include package data goes back to 0. An SState mirrors has been removed from whitelist and is now blacklisted again. So this is the kind of thing we can do from the UI to help people to set the right options. The same with publishing. So I if I want to, there is an option in here to publish the SDK after each build. This is one of the things that I hope will provide some value when it comes to doing Toaster, to automate things like this. So publish the SDK, it's an option that in theory, after you run each build, will run the OE publish SDK command. But to select it, it says here that I need to provide the SDK update URL. So I need to click change in here and provide the URL to the directory where I'm going to share the SDK with my developers. And when I click save, this option becomes available. So I can click it, and that means that every time I build my SDK, Toaster will take care of issuing the OE publish SDK command, and this will go straight into this directory where developers can just update their SDK with DevTool. There are other variables exposed in here. People can edit all these. The only thing I guess to mention is that right now Toaster only supports the equal operator from BitBake. So in the case of inherit blacklist, where you're supposed to append to it, what we could do is to have the default value in there and leave it there when you edit the value. So in theory, hopefully that will help people to kind of just add to it instead of removing. And that is pretty much it. The idea, I guess, behind the design is to provide an easy way to build in the SDK with same defaults, but also exposing the full power of the extensible SDK, so that people who want to tweak the configuration can do so from Toaster and do not have to abandon Toaster and move to a different interface to do this, which is one of the main criticisms that we receive about Toaster at the moment. That's it. Let me know what you think.